Hello everyone. Before I start, I must say there's nowhere in the world I'd rather be right now. To be in Detroit, a city that runs rich with cultural values and history, surrounded by politically woke people who see the problems of today and work to fix them. Speaking about Thurgood Marshall, my lifetime hero, and the man who has inspired not just my career, but how I lead my life. I feel like I'm dreaming. And I know that Thurgood Marshall isn't someone who's typically celebrated, and there are a lot of things you could be doing today. Instead, but you all chose to come here to celebrate this important man, his life, his achievements, and listen to me speak. It really means a lot to see every one of you. Thurgood Marshall gave many speeches in his lifetime. We celebrate him for his influential speeches in motivating others not with violence, but with words, as he did with Brown versus the Board of Education and Smith versus Albright. In these cases, his words influence others to change laws, to strike down outright racist Jim Crow laws, to bring about equal rights by fixing the problem at its source. Today, I want to talk about Thurgood Marshall's worst publicly received speeches. I want to talk about Justice Marshall's worst received speech on a day celebrating the successes of the man, not because I secretly despise him, but because it says something about standing up for what you believe is right. The speech I want to talk about is Thurgood Marshall's bicentennial speech. He gave this speech at an event celebrating the 200th anniversary of the United States Constitution. At the event, many speakers praised the document and those who wrote it, but not Thurgood Marshall. When Thurgood Marshall spoke, he did not continue to praise the Constitution. He spoke on how flawed the original document was. He said the Constitution was defective from the start, requiring several amendments, a civil war, and momentous social transformation to attain the system of constitutional government and its respect for individual freedoms and human rights we hold fundamental today. I don't think it's surprising at all why his audience didn't like his speech. He went to a party and he insulted the host. But that was only the surface reason why his audience didn't like his speech. The underlying reason for the poor reception of his speech was the shallow public perception of what patriotism is. Patriotism to his audience, and still to many people today, is just waving a flag and supporting your government. When Thurgood Marshall spoke, he questioned the celebration and he attacked the U.S. government and its creation. According to his audience, he was not being patriotic. But this is not the way Thurgood Marshall thought of patriotism. He thought of patriotism as supporting your government to better it, but also to question your government in order to better it. In giving his speech, Thurgood Marshall was being the best patriot his values dictated. He didn't care that people wouldn't like his speech. He didn't change or censor himself for others. He spoke for himself and his ideas. That's what's so important about this speech. That's what we need to learn from this speech. Thurgood Marshall knew people weren't going to like his speech, but he still gave it. He stood up for his patriotism, up for what he thought was right. I know we hear it all the time. I know we think it's a tad cliche. Stand up for what you think is right. It's the most generic life lesson, but it's a generic life lesson for a good reason. We don't do it enough. We let other people conceal what we believe in, and it's hard not to. For some reason, we have it programmed in our heads that we need the approval of others. Seldom do people realize that this is not true. The people that do realize this truth are visionaries, leaders, change makers. All it takes for you to become a visionary, leader, a change maker, is to truly believe and stand up for what you believe in. When Thurgood Marshall gave his bicentennial speech and stood up for what he thought was right, for his ideas of patriotism, he had to ask himself, ain't it patriotic? And that's what we need to do. Every time you don't know if you should get into an argument about politics, ask yourself, ain't it patriotic? Every time you see a post of hate speech online and you don't know if you should respond, ask yourself, ain't it patriotic? Every time there's a march for change in your town, but you're worried about your neighbors learning about your political affiliation, ask yourself, ain't it patriotic? Every time there's a school shooting and you want to advocate for gun control, but you're worried others might think it's too soon, Ask yourself, ain't it patriotic? Every time a hate crime goes unpunished, after someone makes a homophobic remark, after an openly racist, sexist man is elected president, and you're worried how others will take your response, ask yourself, ain't it patriotic? Once again, I want to thank you all for coming out today. I'm confident that you will all become visionaries, leaders, change makers, and Thurgood Marshalls. Because when you made the decision to come today, you had to ask yourself, ain't it patriotic?